Hey guys, this is a new episode of Writers Uncut. I'm inviting Deirdre Hall, and we can get started. We are waiting on her. Hey,
Good morning.
good morning.
Filter so I look a little more awake. There we go. Good. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I need to turn your volume up.
Oh, you know what? Hold on a minute. So there we go. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just us, so until someone joins, I can still tinker with the lighting. Oh, too much. Better. Okay. So
yeah.
I'm having a good morning. AT&T royally pissed me off. So I'm really glad I was able to write 2,000 words before I went off on a rampage with them. So
another example of how writing is really therapeutic.
well, and it's funny because AT&T actually pissed me off when I was halfway through my chapter. And I said, no. I said, we're going to finish this chapter, and then we were going to call and yell at someone. So it did help calm me down.
Okay. What happened?
So we recently switched our service over to them.
Yeah.
And they made us sign up for auto pay, which is fine.
Oh.
And then they canceled my service and said we didn't pay the bill. And I said, but it's on auto pay.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, yeah, we do see that. It is on auto pay. Don't worry about it. We'll pay it.
Yeah.
And then they canceled it again because it wasn't paid. And I was like, you're not even trying to auto pay my bill. I don't even, anyway, whatever.
I'm glad it worked out and that we can communicate right now.
I know. Well, and it's funny because I was afraid of that, but the Wi-Fi works, so I could still get on Wi-Fi. So anyway, I'm here, and I am switching back to Verizon soon because AT&T sucks.
I have AT&T, but I just sort of like years ago, I just set it and forget it, and I don't even know. But anyway, we are here. We are Writers Uncut, two authors talking about writing, publishing, and promotion, and we welcome you. We don't have any questions in our queue today, but we see a few of you have joined. So if you have questions, anything off the top of your head or something that you've been wondering about, pop it into the comment box and we will do our best to answer.
Anything regarding writing, reading, publishing, Bob's Burgers, we're here to share our knowledge. You can quiz me on Bob's Burgers or The Office, you guys. I have lots of TV talents.
So I have a little confession.
Mm-hmm. If you're going to say you've never seen Bob's Burgers, we got a problem.
I don't know what it is, other than a cartoon.
Okay, so Bob's Burgers is the best television show that is on TV right now in the world. Not of all time, because that was The Office, but like a live current show right now, you've got to watch it. It's freaking funny. But I tell everybody, you kind of have to ignore that terrible pilot episode because they were kind of finding their way. Mm-hmm. But you watch a few episodes, and my husband, who is very anti any comedy or cartoons or anything, he loves it too. So that really says something. So it's my show. It's my jam. So you got to watch it.
I'll give it a shot. My husband is into the cartoons and like Simpsons and like that whole, that like whole realm of TV. So I'll make him watch it with me.
Yes,
he will like it for you. So a few more of you have joined. If you have any questions, ask away. But we'll start by talking about, since it's coming up on the holiday season, kind of like, quote, gifts for authors. And, we're not suggesting that you send us gifts, but.
Yes, we are. It's P.O. Box.
Cheyenne wants some more Bob's Burgers swag. Yep. So that would be top of her list. Mm-hmm. But more in the lines of like what we can kind of encourage our readers to, to do, or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but kind of ways that readers can help us have the opportunity to, write and publish more, because, sometimes, and I'm not talking to the writers right now, but sometimes for readers, it's like, oh, like the books are just there, but obviously there need to be sales in order for the books to continue, if that makes sense. So some of the things that we've both found beneficial are obviously reviews, and they can be good or bad reviews, really. Like, I don't think it necessarily matters, but reviews offer the opportunity for other readers to find the book, right? Like, or to be, to learn more about the book. And it also gives us opportunities to be a part of like promotions and different things like that, including BookBub, which I've been hearing different things about BookBub lately. I don't know, you might be able to say more about that. Yeah. BookBub for the while was like the king of book promotion.
It was. So BookBub was the king of indie promotions.
Yeah.
And then they handed over the reins to traditional publishers.
Yeah.
And if your traditional publisher will snag you a BookBub deal, then that's great. But if you're trying to get one yourself, you're pretty much SOL. Like, it's nearly impossible now. So, and the people that are getting the BookBub deals are saying it's not nearly as accessible as it used to be.
Yeah.
Like, I recently had a friend say she had 16,000 downloads on her first BookBub promotion, which was like in 2014 or so, and her newest one was 700.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a huge drop, which is sad.
I've been hearing a lot about that too. Like, a couple years ago when people did a BookBub, and I've had a couple with my traditional books, but that was also a couple years ago. Oh, we've got a question. I'll just finish up my thought. And a BookBub in the past could really propel you up the ranks very quickly. And I guess a lot of people who do have the opportunity to get a BookBub, which is not easy, haven't been seeing as much of a return, as many sales.
Well, Amazon also shut that down too. So Amazon has recently changed their algorithms to where if you suddenly get like a BookBub deal and you have a huge burst of sales, you don't get that high ranking like you used to. And then sometimes they even like shadow ban people where the book ranking will completely disappear for 24 hours because Amazon feels like you're scamming the system by having like a huge spike of sales. So that's why they say a slow launch is the best. You want like slow, steady growing sales. So I don't even try to do BookBub anymore. I've just kind of given up on it. I feel like that was king a long time ago, but not so much anymore. Yeah. So do we want to answer Matt's question?
We will. I'll just finish kind of the gifts for authors. Blah, blah, blah. So I think reviews are important. And the other thing I was going to say are... what was the other thing? Oh, like also bots, right? We've talked a little bit about that on here. So if you are a reader and you like, say, YA contemporary, and you read on your Kindle or even paperback, kind of, having, how do you say it? Like buying in that similar category can really help authors have their books shown more on Amazon, which translates into more sales, which translates into more writing, right? So anyway, we'll move on from that because we are getting a few questions. The first one is from Matt Voyager, unless you had anything else to say.
No, I was just going to mention real quick, the reason we talk about Amazon so much is because that's like 100% of the sales. Say hello to my cat. Amazon, like so many of our book sales, both traditional and self-published, comes from Amazon, and I both love it and hate it. So that's kind of because some people are like, why don't you talk about other bookstores? Because other bookstores don't perform as well as Amazon, unfortunately. So we're kind of like, we have to cater to how they do things and how they like things in order to get sales.
Actually, that could be another whole episode. Obviously,
there's
numerous book, digital book outlets, throughout the world, actually, not just in the US. But I think definitely, and you and I have both tested this quite a bit, going wide with different books. And I think it's a really, really slow process. And I don't mean slow like a year. I mean like slow, like several years, unless you like somehow get lucky. But I think generally speaking, even if you write a good book, even if it's edited and it's in a popular genre, it doesn't necessarily mean if you go wide that you're going to get a ton of reads because it isn't as much reach. But we can talk about that because I have a lot of thoughts on that in terms of creative freedom and like the long game of publishing and Amazon having control over everything. But we will answer your question, Matt. Okay, so
yes.
Well, here it is. What are your thoughts on agents? Are they the only way to get out of the slush pile? Hope that translates. It does, yes. Is that the best way for traditional publishers? Well, interesting you should ask us that, Matt, because both of us have stories about both avenues.
Yeah, we know this. We know this. So what are my thoughts on agents? Overall, agents are amazing. And I love my agent so much, and she's the best, and she's really, really awesome. And but to your point, are they the only way to get out of the slush pile? No, actually they're not. However, I would say they're the smartest way to get out of the slush pile, because I actually had 4 books published by 2 different publishers without an agent, and they were smaller deals with smaller publishers with smaller advances, and they haven't been nearly as successful as my bigger deal with my bigger publisher with my agent. So and I've actually done a lot of research and talking and thinking on this, and while there are some small indie publishers that accept non-agented submissions, I really try to tell everyone not to go that route. A lot of people, some people don't care. They just want a book deal. They don't care how they get it. And that's fine. If that's your goals, that's fine. If your goal is any sort of success or reach, even not even money success, but like if you want your books to be seen by lots and lots of people, I would not go with a small press that doesn't require agents, because they simply don't have that reach. And a lot of them are great and they love their book and they're fun to work with. And I love both of my small publishers, but they just don't have the reach. Mm-hmm. So I would still say, if you want your book to see as many people as possible and to have the biggest chance at success, you have to go the agent route. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. I think I'll go back a little bit. I think defining what you want from publication. So if you want to be the next J.K. Rowling or Stephen King, you do have to have an agent. That's what it's gonna have to be at some point. Now both of us, like Shan said, we both had our first books published unagented. We got lucky in a way, I guess, because it gave us a lot of experience and kind of forced us both to figure things out on our own, whereas an agent can definitely hold your hand along the way, which I think that learning experience was really good, and I don't regret it at all. In fact, I found that my books were pretty successful unagented. Yeah.
Well, you had a great publisher too.
I had a specific publisher named Amazon. I was actually under an imprint that Amazon owns called Skyscape. So that's kind of a different story. But I think it's important to ask yourself, like, if you're in the camp where you love writing and it's going to be something that you're going to do for the rest of your life, and you just want a few people to read your books, and you'd be happy to hold that book in your hand and put it on your shelf, and that's kind of like the end game, just having it and not necessarily self-published, but having the publishing, even a small press attached to the book. And you can have phenomenal, like Shannon was saying, phenomenal editors and support and book cover designers. Like, there are some amazing people out there that care so much and they're so passionate, and you're not going to get kind of lost in the slush, so to speak. But if you do want financial success and you want a lot of readers, chances are you will need to go with an agent who has connections to bigger publishers and even Amazon. Like my agent and I were talking about submitting to Amazon again. Like that's not out of the realm of possibility. And so I think it's important to just ask yourself what you're looking for, what you want. And the other thing I was going to say is, with agents and with traditional publishing, just to remember that it's a slow process, to be patient. Whereas if you've already been introduced to the independent publishing world, or even smaller presses, generally those do move a little faster. And so if you're going traditional, put on your patient pants.
And then one day you might be like me, where you have news to share that you're not allowed to share yet. And then you're going to sit here thinking, I almost wish I could go back in time where I just had to be patient and not know. So anyway, that's my little hint of stuff I can't tell you yet. I can't
for when you can announce that, though.
I know, we're going to have to do a special episode. Okay, so Matt had another question. He said, what are your, oh wait, that's the same one. Has the era of self-publishing and ebooks taken away agents' powers, or are they still as important as they ever were? And I would say, and I don't even think this is controversial. Huh?
I just want to say, I like how you asked this question, agent powers. It's cool. It's like superpowers.
They do have superpowers. My agent has the superpower to make my heart beat really fast whenever I see her name on my caller ID. So anyway, I would say, and I don't even think this is a controversial thing to say. Yes, they are still 100% important because traditional publishing and self-publishing are two completely different realms, like completely different. So you can't even really compare them because they're so different. So if you want your book traditionally published, you 100% need an agent. They have lots of power and in a really good way because my agent negotiated and nitpicked like every single little ounce of my contract and made it better for us because publishers will try to grab what they can. And if you're just a regular person and not a lawyer, you may not know how to do that yourself. And I would even argue, even if you're a lawyer but not an agent, you wouldn't know how to do that yourself. So agents know a lot of stuff. They know a lot of publishers, they know a lot of editors, and they are there to make your book as successful as it can be. And with self-publishing, it's just such a different world. Like, it's so different, you really can't even compare them. It's almost like two different forms of media, even though they're both books. It's almost just completely different. So that's my thought on that.
I think that's pretty much like the summation of it. And we were talking a little bit before, you and I, offline, about kind of what we've learned this year. And I would say that's a key takeaway. And we can talk more about it maybe in our next Writers Uncut. But knowing that traditional publishing and independent publishing are really two different industries, even though they both have the same product. Very, very important. So again, Matt, just coming back to that question, like ask yourself what you want out of it, self-publishing. And we touched on it last week, talking about writing market. Self-publishing is a very specific writing style kind of book. It's hard to break through into self-publishing with more or less commercial, I guess, more literary type pieces, whereas independent publishing, traditional publishing is more like, that the readership there is more welcoming of that. So two very different things, a couple questions you can ask yourself to kind of figure out which direction you want to go in. And neither one, I don't think is better than the other. I really love having the support in the community in a traditional publishing area. I love my agent. I love editing and working with people in that capacity, and book designers and cover designers that are like, I have this vision for your book. And it's like, wow, it's like a collaborative thing. And then I love on the independent side, I love having the freedom of all of that. And so, neither one is better than the other if that's kind of what you're trying to figure out, Matt, or anyone else.
My cat was just glaring at us.
And yeah, so anyway, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Kendra, I didn't see your comment if you left one. So leave it again, unless I saw your good morning text.
And Patricia said, being seen is key. Yes, being seen is key. Getting your books in front of the eyes of people that are going to read them is so important. And I think probably one of the most difficult parts of both traditional and self-publishing, but I would say even more so self-publishing.
Okay, Kendra had a question.
Nice. Hi, Kendra.
Also, Kendra, are you the one that sent me a letter to my P.O. box? If so, thank you. If I'm wrong, forget that. It says, so she said, will an agent advocate when the pub site is asking for a change in a story you aren't wanting yourself? Yeah, I would say they would. I personally haven't had that problem yet because I liked all the changes my editor asked for, but I'm betting they would because my agent is like super amazing and she's fought for me with other unrelated things like that. So yeah, I would say that they would.
I'll go a little bit deeper on this though, because I found, especially in my second book, Pearl, with traditional publisher, I didn't have an agent, and there were some instances where some suggestions were made, changes were made, suggestions for changes to be made. And at first I was just like, this is my book. No way. Like, this is how I wrote it. This is what I want. And it took me a couple days to kind of come around and see that a lot of times, and not all the time, but a lot of times your editor, whoever you're working with at the publishing house, they do have more of their finger on the pulse of what readers want necessarily than we do, because we're so close to the book, we're so close to the story. It's such an intimate relationship we have that it can be hard for us to kind of step back and say, okay, is this actually what I want and what's right? Or is this what's best for the book? And I think it always comes down to what's best for the book, what's best for the reader, that kind of thing. But I think the agent is there to go back to you.
Can you hear my dog chewing on the bone I gave her? Okay, good. I gave it to her to keep her quiet, but now her chewing is so loud over here.
If anyone has any other questions, go for it. You're welcome, Kendra. Thanks for joining us.
Also, I would even say, say if you don't want to do something the publisher wants you to do, your agent might try to talk you into doing it anyway if she feels that he or she feels that it's best for the book. Because Rachel can hear my dog, sorry. Nova, stop it. So I do what I can to try to make these animals shut up, and they don't. So anyway, a lot of times authors don't want to change their work at all, but sometimes it really is for the best. But I think if you have a severe, serious issue, your agent will absolutely back you up because that's their job. That's what they do. And my agent is really good at it. She can write a snarky email like nobody's business. Like, she's amazing. So.
I love that. Okay, so Marsh 8696. Do we know who that is? Who are you, Marsh?
Nope. We have a new viewer.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So this person says, as far as learning to write well, people say you have to read a lot, which we all know is true. Do you think audiobooks count? Yeah.
Yeah. I love audiobooks. I have one. I'm pretty much listening to an audiobook every single day of my life. So yes, I think they 100% count because it's still reading. The words are still getting in your head. The story is still being told to you. It's still completely 100% reading. So yes. And your first part, yes. You have to read to be a good writer. That is my biggest piece of advice that I tell anybody.
Yeah. There's an indie author once that said, like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't write a lot. I mean, I don't read a lot. And I'm just like I don't know. The two go together like peanut butter and jelly, or
no, but stop it.
Milk and cookies.
Ignore me.
Like, they just kind of is what it is. And I would say, yeah, audiobooks are great. The only caveat I would add is when you're reading, text in a book, whether it's digital or paper, you do see you do pick up on like grammar stuff that you might not remember from when you were in grade school. And I think there is something about like reading it and getting the input that way, but I definitely listen. And I think through listening, you get pacing, you get cadence. And I think that can be important too. So yeah, so listen away. We like audiobooks. Go back to Kendra. I understand that sometimes we are just too attached to a project and need outside perspective. Yeah. And if you're not agented or are not doing traditional publishing, having a beta reader, having a friend that, on one hand isn't going to be like, yeah, this is the greatest thing I've ever written because they're your friend, or is going to like tear it apart and they really don't know what they're talking about because they don't read in that genre ever. So finding someone that is well-versed in what you write, and even if they're just a reader, that's fine. And they're not a writer, that's totally okay. Getting their perspective, I think, is more valuable ultimately than getting, your mom's perspective, or like, Joey Jojo down the block that doesn't read and just has like big opinions. I
don't let my mom or Joey Jojo read my drafts. Like, you can read the book when it's done because your opinion doesn't matter because you're not a professional. Like, and I know that might sound harsh, but it's like people that read a ton of books in your own genre are some of the best beta readers to have.
Yeah.
And also because they'll actually give you different advice from your fellow writer friends, because as a writer, we read it kind of with a different outlook, we read it more technical, nitty-gritty, and a reader will just tell you, their experience in reading it. So I'm always happy to get feedback and to get people's thoughts. And I've noticed that since I'm a lifelong Texan, and apparently here in Texas, we have these like Texasisms that nobody's ever heard of. Because every time someone will read my book, my agent included, they'll be like, what is this? Like, I don't understand this. I'm like, oh, everybody in Texas knows what this is. So it is good to have an outsider perspective, because especially if your book's going to get translated for other countries and stuff, like, it needs to make sense to everybody. So
can you give us an example of a Texasism?
I knew you were going to say that. Do you know, no, I don't know if I can. It's kind of embarrassing.
I know. I'm on the fly here.
It makes me sound like some kind of backwoods hick. Do you know what giving the deuce means?
I don't.
I bet Rachel knows. You'll have to know, right? Okay, so it's like the peace sign. And I had written that in a book that they were just giving the deuce to each other because that's like what we say here.
Yeah.
And Trisha knows. Oh yeah, or Trisha said like, what kind of Coke do you have? Exactly. Here in Texas, we call every single soda Coke. And like the other day, we were at the grocery store, and I told my daughter, I said, "Hey, grab me some of that cheap Coke." And she knew that I meant the H-E-B grocery store brand Coke Zero because that's the kind that I want. But that's what we call it. So it's like these Texas things that nobody else does except for us. But yeah, so it is great to have other perspectives just for fun. I don't know if other states might have that. I don't know, but Texans, we're like a special group of people.
Yeah.
And we tend to think we're better than everybody else, which we are, to be fair. So
our born author wrote "Knee High to a June Bug" and then "Two Fingers" by. Are those
yep.
I'm guessing those are Texasisms, more Texasism.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mouthful. Yeah, I would say like in the Northeast, people say "wicked" a lot, and that means
we don't say that here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bless your
heart. And
heart.
Rachel also said, "Bless your heart," and like that's our way of insulting you. It's not meant as a compliment. It's meant as an insult. And a true Texas lady knows how to say that correctly. And I always get pissed when someone says it to me. But yeah. So we're special here in Texas. So that's another question or another thing is maybe don't make your beta readers be people that are too close in your social circle because they won't be able to catch stuff like that.
Although, I would, just for the sake of argument, I would say that I kind of like that, what was it, like throwing two fingers, or what did you call it? Two fingers? See, in England, this means something very different than this, right? Anyway.
No, well, okay, it's a Houston thing. And I also listen to a lot of like Houston rappers. And so I've learned a lot of Houston rap slang that should never be repeated, like, ever. And my husband was like, "Oh my God, that's like a gang terminology or something." I'm like, I did not know that. So you got to really be careful with the types of lingos that you use in books.
But what I wanted to say, though, is like in terms of, if you're writing a book and it takes place in Texas, Matt, you're from England, right? Or you're somewhere in that part of the world, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sorry if I offended my my non-Texan friends by doing that. It's just like, it's a way of saying like, hey, what's up here in Texas? So.
By the way, I'll finish my thought really quick. Yeah, two fingers means so but this way is peace, and I don't need to.
No, it's.
But if you're writing a book that takes place in Texas, for instance, and you want that authenticity, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I could figure out, okay, throwing two fingers means peace, or it means the other thing, or like you can just kind of get it from the context too. And I think that does lend richness to the story. Whereas if you are trying to be super commercial and your book takes place in, I don't know, like North Dakota, where that's not necessarily a thing, it's just something in your head because you're from Texas, then it doesn't really translate. But I think if you have a book that's taking place in England or in Texas or somewhere, and there are things people say, or the cultural things, I do kind of like that, because you feel like you're in the world, and then you feel like you're more
that is true.
And
maybe you can find a way to throw in a little line that kind of explains it. Yeah. If you're using something that's super, small that not everyone would know. And that also makes me think of if you're dating yourself. And I've seen this happen a lot, and because I've been reading a lot of my friends who are aspiring authors, I've been reading a lot of their drafts for them and stuff. And I've noticed so many people are writing young adult books and putting dated references in there. And it's like, you really have to be younger. Because like I've seen so many, they want to compare the sexy 16-year-old high school kid to Chris Helmsworth. And I'm like, my 14-year-old daughter does not care about 40-year-old Chris Helmsworth. Like, he just doesn't. Maybe Liam, but it's more like a One Direction kid, or Austin Mahone is a name I hear tossed around. I don't know who that is. But so it's like, you really have to kind of watch, if you're dating yourself, if your audience is for teenagers, because they're not going to know what you're talking about, or they're not going to relate. They're going to see him as an old guy.
So I'm going to kind of contradict myself from my last statement about adding things to kind of enrich your story. I would say in terms of like the dating piece, not dating like two people dating, but like time. I would say be as general as you can, because I think it's so funny, and it does take me out of the story a little bit when I read about like a flip phone, which, you know, no one knew necessarily that, you know, the phones are going to be what they look like now, and we don't know what they're going to look like in another 10 years. And you do kind of want to create that timelessness. And I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but if you are wanting to reference like pop culture stuff, sometimes it's better to do a fictitious and kind of build a little story around that person, so the reader gets the gist that they're, you know, like the pop star and everyone loves them, and this, you know, the love interest looks just like this kid, without being like, oh, it's so and so, because then so and so at some point is going to be a 40-year-old guy, and the teens that you want to reach aren't necessarily going to connect to that. So I think there are ways around it without being like too specific or dating yourself and referencing. And then of course, if, you know, celebrity does something terrible, which they sometimes do, you don't necessarily want to be associated with that in your book, because maybe the readers are going to be like, oh, like he's a creep.
That is a really, really good point. Really, really good point. Also, I think, because I see a lot of authors will kind of revert back to the classics, like you mentioned, like old Lucille Ball type movies instead of current ones. And I guess you can kind of do that. But my high school teenager doesn't know any of that, because we're not very cultured here in my household. So I would say, I think Heather Demetrios did it really well. And I actually cracked up laughing because in her book, I'll Meet You There. Yeah. So the girl works at a hotel, and every hotel room is themed. And there's a line in the book that says, like, there's one room that's the Gilligan's Island room. And then the next sentence says, or there might even be in parentheses, it's like, Gilligan's Island was this really famous show back in the 70s or whatever. Yeah. I've never seen it. I don't know anything about it, but I know that it's popular with like our older customers, whatever. And I stopped and I read that and I was like, wow, I'm really old, because I knew what Gilligan's Island was, but I feel like that line had to be thrown in there for the younger generation that doesn't know. So if you want to reference something kind of old, it helps to add a little line in there. And I learned that from reading her book. So I don't state specific types of cell phones or specific types of cars. And if I'm going to mention something a little bit older, I toss in a line about what it is, just to kind of describe it to people.
I actually just did that in a short story, like the two love interests, they were friends when they were like, even, well, they're adults, it's an adult book, so they were friends when they were teens, and they loved old black and white movies. And so like I could get away with referencing that even though they were still on the younger side. You know, some of those old black and white movies, like, I mean, I'm not even that old. I don't even know them all, but you know, some of them are classics. So yeah, throwing in a line just to kind of spell it out a little bit for the reader without taking them out of the scene, I think is helpful. I'm going to go back a little bit, really, right here, real quick. Kendra wrote, I often enjoy writers who do keep it timeless, and social media and devices aren't overpowering the storyline. Technology is ever evolving. Yeah, that you just said it. You said it, girl. I think also being careful of, like, you know, DMing or instant messaging, like some of that stuff just starts to disappear, even though it was part of our culture at one point. It's not necessarily like what we do anymore. Like you can just use a general term like messaging or send a text. Because I mean, at least not in the next decade, texting isn't going to go away. It's like what we do.
My daughter sent like 20 texts last month, and they were to me. Teenagers don't text anymore. They Snapchat.
Yeah.
So maybe stick with messaging. Also, bye, Kendra. Thanks for joining us. She has to get back to work, so thank you.
Your lunch break's over. I was going to say enjoy your lunch. Okay. Matt says, I always wondered if writers write to stay timeless, so forget cells and Xbox references. Stephen King says he's very much in the time which dates his books. Yeah.
I don't know if does that mean Stephen King he's still living in the past, like in how he writes his books? I don't know. Plus, also, Stephen King can kind of do whatever he wants, and I'm not going to judge him for it. So,
but I just the first question, I always wondered if writers write to stay timeless, and I think it depends on the writer. I didn't read the book yet, but I want to. I just watched the movie Crazy Rich. I'm having a hard time talking today. What is the matter with me? Crazy Rich Asians. And there was like a little, in the movie, there was like a little part where like text bubbles were popping up and stuff. And I thought it was like really cute, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great movie. And, I thought that was really well done. And there are instances of that where that's part of the feel, or like you could say like almost the voice of the book, where it's very contemporary, it's very much in the moment, and that's not timeless. Like at some point that's going to be like, oh, they have text bubbles. But I think if you do want to go for longevity, especially, or depending on what you're writing and who you're writing to, I think timelessness, or as much as possible, is important. Obviously, if you're writing like Regency romance, you're not going to have any kind of like technological communication. But if you're doing contemporary YA or something like that, trying to keep it general as opposed to very specific, unless that's like a really important part of the story. Like I've seen a few books, I'm blanking on which one it was. I think it was called Antisocial, #Antisocial. I think it came out earlier this year. And texting and blogs and stuff were very much part of the story. It was almost like a character. And so I think that can work. So, there's different things to think about, I guess is my point.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the genre and the book and what you're writing for. Because my first several manuscripts referenced all kinds of specific things, from car models to flip phones to getting McDonald's Happy Meals. Which, by the way, McDonald's recently got rid of the Mighty Kids meal, and I'm really pissed about that. And if you had put that in a book, it's not going to, hold throughout time. Although I would assume McDonald's itself will probably always be around. But so now I actually make an effort to not date myself, with few exceptions. I tend to always mention the movie Mean Girls because I love it. You can always mention Harry Potter because that's never going away. And I make up a lot of stuff in my books. Like all of my books mention the band Zombie Radio, which is a band I invented myself. So it's like they can talk about their favorite band, and it spans across all my different books, but it's not a real band. At least I don't think it is. I'm always worried someone's going to make that band at some point. And then like Sarah Dessen has, and gosh, this came out probably 15 years ago or so. I guess when MySpace and Facebook was a big deal, she invented her own social media website that all the characters in all of her books have it. It's called YouMe, a YouMe account. And so that way it's like her own technology that she invented, and it can grow and change throughout her books, and has nothing to do with the real world. But you know what it means because it's obviously like a Facebook type thing. So.
I like that workaround, and you kind of you're and like I was saying before, you're enriching your world that you've created, especially if you have multiple books or if you're writing a series. Getting back to Matt, I'm in the moment. Stephen references things like needing an operator to make a call, i.e. 1970s Salem's Lot. So yeah, I mean, I think if it's a book that takes place like in a certain era, or like there's certain circumstances, like that makes sense. Like I get it, and like again, Stephen King can do whatever he wants, but that's like a very specific story. And so yes, and having the operator makes sense. But if you're writing, I guess what we're talking about is writing contemporary now, being careful not to add too many specifics about, brands, social media sites, that kind of thing. Right now, like Snapchat's the big thing among teens, and those teens, as they age, might still use Snapchat in, 5 more years. But there's probably going to be another one for the upcoming generation that are now younger, and they're going to have their own thing. And so I guess it's just what we're saying is to be careful how you reference that, and try and be more general, or get a little bit creative, like you're saying with Sarah Dessen. But if you do, like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we're not criticizing. I'm sure I've put stuff in some of my books where it's like, it no longer exists. Yes, keeping it contemporary. Yeah. So, yeah. Oops, sorry.
Is your phone dying?
No, I just got a text.
Oh, okay.
Did you see it?
So should we move on to talking about maybe book recommendations or gift recommendations?
Yes.
Just for fun, since the holidays are coming up.
Yes, I love it. So you want to do a book recommendation, and then a reader gift recommendation?
Sounds good.
Okay. I have my Kindle today. Hold on. And the book, oh no, where'd it go? All right. Do you want to go first? Because I had it open, but it disappeared.
I'm recommending really any book by this author, Jennifer DiGiovanni. I'm terrible at pronouncing this. This is my senior year of awesome. It's the School Days series. I have all of her books on ebook, but this is the only paperback I have, so it gets to be the spokesbook for the day. She writes really cute, really sweet contemporary young adult romance. And I just love them. So that's my first recommendation. Check it out. And I'm sorry it's backwards. I don't know how to make it not backwards.
Yeah, I don't know either. Okay, so you did a fiction. I'm going to do a nonfiction just because we're probably talking to a bunch of writers. This one, oh no. Okay, here it is. And now look, I look red.
Does that say Write Naked?
It does. Hold on. Let me see if I can
I love it.
Hold on. I'll turn the brightness down. Maybe that'll help. So this is by Jennifer Probst. And okay, there you go. You can see it now. And it's a bestseller, Secrets to Writing Romance and Navigating the Path to Success. So I do write romance. So, no big surprise there. But there are a lot of things in this book that apply to anyone that writes. And the title is, not implying that you should write naked, although if that's your thing, I guess that's your thing. But I read this a little while ago, and actually, when I was scrolling through my Kindle to see which book I wanted to recommend, I'm like, I'm going to read that again because it's been a little while. But I felt like she had a lot of really practical suggestions for how to navigate both traditional and self-publishing, because I believe she does both. And I think she built up her name as a traditional published author, which then oftentimes they can do self-publishing and don't have to be as careful with writing to market like we've been talking about. Another topic for another day. But a lot of her suggestions were really practical and a lot of mindset stuff. So we're writers Uncut. We're just on the fly, just giving you what's on the top of our head. And sometimes that might come across as, writing is really hard. Waiting in the publishing process is a challenge. All these things that come up, and she had some really nice suggestions, and a few moments of like, yeah, I totally get that, and I kind of chuckled to myself that were helpful. So Write Naked by Jennifer Probst.
Well, I just added that to my wish list, which again is P.O. Box 2475. Not kidding. So yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm reading it right now on Amazon. And someone else stole her title and published a book with the same title a few months after this one came out, so don't buy that one, buy this one.
Yeah, it's the one that has like a little pink shirt on it. There, now you can see it better. Okay, so now gifts for readers. Like those can be gifts for readers or writers or whatever, because writers need to read and readers like reading. But gifts for readers, I always struggle with what to get my reader friends, but I want to get them something reader bookish, I guess. And I'm just going to plug one of my favorite Etsy shops called Nova Bookish. You might recognize the name. She has fabulous writer decals, which I love. You can decorate your device. You can decorate your water bottle, your laptop. My laptop's right here. You can't see what I'm pointing at, but really fun writerly things that we get. You can use them as bumper stickers. They're safe in weather. And then she also has really, really cute Christmas ornaments, which I ordered for my kids. Oh, you have one right there. So
this one, the ribbon's messed up. So this one has my name on it. I can make them with your name on it, and they're filled with shredded book pages. Aren't they adorable? So you can get those on my Etsy shop. And I guarantee you all the money that I make goes toward buying more books. So thank you for plugging that. My Etsy shop is called Nova Bookish. It's named after my dog because I'm not very clever at all. So it's novabookish.etsy.com. Yeah. So thank you. And yes, I love my Etsy store because every day I wake up and I get my writing done. And then I take a break around noon and I make all my Etsy orders and ship those out, and then I eat lunch. So my Etsy store is like the precursor to lunch, which is my favorite part of the day. So thank you for that.
Oh, go ahead. Can I add something?
I was just going to say my writing gift idea, but did you have something else to say?
Something related to that, just a little tip. I think it's important to, like you said, you have the time of the day where you write and then you take a little break and you're still doing something creative, because I think, you know, for a lot of us, like, creators need to create, like, we have that desire, that drive, that need. But I think it is good to kind of sometimes step away from the actual act of writing, and it could be reading, like any other hobby, something that does like feed your mind and, like, you know, your spirit in a way, that is creative. I think ultimately influences us to be more creative in our writing, which is what we want. So
absolutely, I love the hands-on crafty stuff. So my next gift idea for the reader or writer in your life would be a tote bag. This one's a Christmas tote bag. There's also other tote bags. This one's from New York. But canvas tote bags, you guys, like, readers and writers love them. We can't get enough of them. And we have a big old stack of them at home, but we need more. So you can always find some really cute tote bags to give your reader or writer friends.
What did the second one say?
Oh, it says, "There is no enjoyment like reading," from Jane Austen.
I like that.
And I got it at the New York Public Library last time I was there.
Oh, nice. I love it.
I really wish we could make this, like, mirror our screen so everything's not backwards. This one I bought from Katie Budget Books in Katy, Texas. It's obviously very seasonal. Yes. But I love it. I've been using it every day this month when I go out in public. So.
Oh, nice, nice, and it also helps us find our people. You know, like the book lovers who gravitate towards each other. But well, there you have it. If anyone has any other suggestions for bookish gifts or books to read, you can leave it in the comments. And if you wanted to recap any of this, our episodes are always on YouTube, or if you have a friend, a writer friend or whatever, and you're like, yeah, they could really benefit from listening, or if they have questions, we're also on YouTube. You have to do the search Writers Uncut in the little box, and we'll come up. And we have a Facebook group that's private. So if you have questions that maybe you don't want to ask here publicly, or just want to go deeper, or you know, post random GIFs that are funny, we have a writers group, and we are Writers Uncut group on Facebook, and you can join us there and chat and kind of start or continue the conversation. And we will be back next Wednesday, which is what's the date? Do you know? 15th? No. It's like,
I have no idea. I don't even know what today is.
It's the 19th.
Today's the 12th, so the 19th.
We'll be back on the 19th. And we won't be on the 26th, which is the day after Christmas, but we are kind of figuring out a new schedule for the new year, including an evening time. So if anyone has any suggestions about an evening time that would work for them, we're not going away in the morning, don't worry, but we're adding an evening time. So,
or a day of the week or something, because we want a lot of people to be able to watch us live and ask us questions. And before we wrap up real quick, I just remembered a really great gift idea to give the writer in your life, and it doesn't even cost any money. Babysit their kids, bring them a meal, or clean their house. Or if you have a lot of money, hire a professional house cleaner to go clean their house for them. Like, something that, which I've been hinting for like years now, and my husband has still never hired someone to come clean the house for me. I don't. Anyway, anything that gives a writer more time to write is a very valuable gift, and we're going to love it. So keep that in mind if you have a writer in your life.
Yes.
And definitely follow us online and come chat with us, because this is a lot of fun. And thank you, Rachel, for joining us on your lunch break. And thank you, Jen, and everybody else that is watching us, because you guys are amazing.
And thank you for the great questions. That's kind of like, we want it to be a live Q&A, and of course you can leave them on our, on our Instagram posts or in a DM or whatever. But we love your questions. Keep them coming, please, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.